2023, Bahamians everywhere had an opportunity to take in the spectacle that is the opening of Parliament and the speech from the throne. As you're aware, the Bahamas is among the oldest parliaments in the region. Parliament was convened in 1729. I believe we may be the third oldest parliament, the fourth oldest parliament in this region. It is important to note that while we are the fourth longest parliament in the British Commonwealth, it is most unfortunate that we have not done sufficient to transform the infrastructure, the ecosystem of the parliament, and truly we have not separated the powers sufficiently between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. And if there was a time that we needed that separation, it is certainly this time under this administration. One of the issues we will address over the course of this month is the unfortunate decision of this administration to have parliamentary secretaries, two members of the executive, an extension of that executive serving on the Public Accounts Committee. It is like two members of that executive watching and reviewing the decisions of themselves. Mr. Deputy, let me express our gratitude to the Governor General, Her Excellency, the Most Honorable Cynthia Pratt, who, as always, was dignified and graceful with a very strong voice. She delivered the speech from the throne. And certainly the government benefited from her serving in that capacity and delivering that speech, because the content left a great deal to be desired. We wish God's continued blessing on her and her family, and wish her every success as Governor General. Her record of service to this country has been inspirational. We're here today, Mr. Deputy, to provide our commentary and feedback on the content of this speech from the throne and some of the circumstances that led up to the proroguing of the House. First, I'd like to acknowledge my appreciation to the residents of Marco City who have given me this rare opportunity to be their voice in this place and to work with them and on their behalf. It is never lost on me, as with the rest of my colleagues, that we are in this place because you have hoisted us on your shoulder and delivered us here to act on your behalf, not on our behalf, not to cultivate friends, though it would be wonderful if we have collegiality in this place. And so for the last 2 years, we have been working diligently to hold this government accountable, but also making sure that we provide better representation as the opposition. Mr. Deputy, it is an honor to have been, in 2021, selected to lead this organization some 50 years after its founding. I'm deeply moved, grateful, and energized by the trust placed in me by our supporters. This assignment came at a time when our party was in deep need of introspection after a bruising election loss. Since our leadership campaign, we have set out to rebuild our machinery, reconnect with our supporters and the Bahamian people, and reignite the excitement among the party faithful and others who yearn for better governance. Our work together has, in fact, produced better. We've been tasked with realigning the focus of the party to meet the demands of the Bahamian people. The public told us 2 years ago, despite significant successes, and we have had quite a few under the last F&M administration, that they also expected more, and they also want us to recognize that they too are partners in this nation-building exercise and must be fully engaged with as we make key decisions. We acknowledged before, unlike the other side who seem not to recognize any mistakes that they make, we have acknowledged those mistakes and have learned from them. We will build on our past successes as we make the changes we must. We have new management with new priorities and ways of doing the people's business. Under my leadership with Shannon Dawn Cartwright, Dr. Dwayne Sands, and our dynamic team, both in the Parliament as well as the officers of our party, we have rededicated ourselves to the Free National Movement's core principles, and we've rededicated ourselves to working on behalf of you, the Bahamian people. We are even more responsive to the needs and aspirations of you, our people. We work for you. We know that Bahamians expect that politicians will live up to the promises made while campaigning and the pledges made during the speech from the throne. We cannot just talk about accountability, transparency, and fairness and empowerment and not deliver on it. We wish to be crystal clear on this. Under our leadership, the FNM will be true to its promises and will seek to improve the lives of Bahamians regardless of which party colors they wear or socio-economic background that they come from. The promises we make, we will keep. And if ever we must make changes, we will give the compelling reasons that drove us to make it, and we will share it with the public. Flip-flopping is not a reputation we will develop, one that this administration is quickly gaining. We respect the role of a strong press, not just to ask questions, but to get real answers from the public servants and policymakers who are tasked with answering those questions. We believe that arrogance is a poison in political organizations, and already we are seeing that begin to to take root in this progressive Liberal Party. We know leadership is about humility, respecting others and hearing their suggestions and responding to the cries and pain of our people. This organization have members who we believe are touched by the afflictions and infirmity of our people. Our candidate, who we've just ratified in West Grand Bahama and Bimini, feels the pain of the people, the same people in the same community where he was born in Hannah Hill. Our mission, the Free National Movement, is about improving lives, not just maintaining the status quo. This administration forecast that they would attempt to move away from tinkering around the edges and would do transformational things. We are still waiting. Our mission is improving the lives of all of our people, not just the select few. We believe that, among other things, that the women of our country deserve the right to be heard and fully integrated in the decision-making of this country at the political and all other levels. And so we are proud of the women of the Free National Movement who continue to stand up for women, girls, and the vulnerable in our society, and for the young people in the party that's taking their rightful place once again in the leadership of our organization. The FNM has a strong tradition of empowering women and young people, and we will expand upon this. And while we pay a special gratitude to all of those who came before us and have made incredible contributions to bringing us where we are, we stand on their shoulders. We know that the task of building a party that is once again ready to govern falls with those of us who now lead and follow. And we assure members of this public, as we do assure members of West Grand Bahama and Bimini, that we will work with you to build a better and more prosperous future. That brings us to where we are today, reflecting on the speech from the throne. We believe such a speech should fill its citizens with hope and excitement. It should outline clear legislative ambitions that Bahamians should feel confident that their government will pursue. It also signals the way that government is likely to govern and the outcomes of the policies and programs that they seek to achieve. Sadly, after 2 years of the Davis Cooper-led PLP administration, Bahamians realize that this is, unfortunately for this government, an exercise in political tradition and theater. The simple truth is that by now Bahamians actually recognize that this PLP government is really about pomp and circumstance, pomp and pageantry. The PLP is primarily about profiling. Some young people may say flossing, flamming. Again, pomp and pageantry, but very little else. When under fire, under pressure, they are about switching the conversation and deflecting. They are about getting them and their selected groups sorted out, and towards this end, they will try to sell us a bag full of promises, as they did in the last two speeches from the throne, but only deliver to us a barrel full of disappointments. This government, in almost every speech, talk about how they have opened an economy that all of us know was already reopening. They talk about special policies that have set us on a path to exponential economic growth, even though we were already returning to a point where revenue was coming into this country because there was pent-up demand in the international community as COVID was drawing to an end. Same government that accused us of running up the national debt when it is actually them who spent well over $1 billion and added $1 billion to the national debt without COVID and without Dorian. And the question is, what do they have to show for increasing the debt? They promised that they would have reduced the borrowing in foreign currency, and clearly they have failed in this regard as well. After promising Bahamians a so-called new day, life has become a nightmare for many common Bahamian men and women. Inflation is out of control. High grocery and light bills are crippling families. And then, of course, starting and managing businesses in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas under this administration is extremely difficult, with new taxes and fees around every corner, hitting almost every sector in this country, hitting Bahamians where it matters most, in their pocketbooks. And even when they attempt to move towards a livable wage, they snatch back those temporary gains by, of course, putting additional bills on the heads of the very same Bahamians, sucking the money out of their pocket because of the mistake made by the Member of Parliament for Fort Charlotte and the Member of Parliament for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador through the BPL debacle. God forbid, if the average citizens get sick, they are unable to afford proper health care, as our public facilities are in a poor state, and medicine is both expensive and sometimes scarce, and most of our brothers and sisters do not have insurance. The lack of insurance in the Bahamas could be a death sentence. And while this is not exclusively one administration's creation or fault, this administration boasts in the wrong areas, because this is not an area they are in any position to give themselves a pat on the back. We are in crisis in healthcare. And of course, Nassau-centric politicians have overlooked Grand Bahama and the Family Islands in a substantial way. Look at the budget, look at the speech from the throne, and look at the allocation in the budget. Does this talk about Grand Bahama in any substantial way? Right now, members of this party is in Grand Bahama. Having omitted you, Grand Bahama, out of the speech from the throne, they're there telling you all the wonderful things they would do. They've just found love, you see. The PLP even decided that they were going to tax bread basket items, feminine products, medication, insurance, all of which was VAT-free under the F&M. Senator Barnett Ellis was right to call them the opposite of progressive. In the speech from the throne, there was no real mention of the island of Grand Bahama, much less West Grand Bahama and Bimini, where they are finally patching some potholes, in some cases craters, finally calling the 300-plus persons on the list who need small home repairs, asking them if they need that little thing, if they need repairs for their house. The same Grand Bahama, where despite their typical big talk and public relations stunt, the PLP has failed to deliver anything of note for the people of Grand Bahama in recent times. After canceling the agreement they met in place with respect to Alukai, and of course we supported any effort they were going to make in order to sell the property, but think about this, 2 years later, there is no sale. They oversold us in what they had the capacity to do, but they under-delivered. The same thing is true about how they have dealt with the Grand Bahama Port Authority. Grand Bahama Port Authority and the government both blame each other for the state of affairs in Grand Bahama. You don't need scapegoats. You need to sit at the table with other stakeholders to talk about the issues that exist, identify the challenges, work out a strategic plan on how to solve them. But instead, the member for Kit Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, aided and abetted by the member for Fox Hill, are in a protracted verbal battle with the Grand Bahama Port Authority rather than work in concert on behalf of the Bahamian people, who are more vulnerable than both policymakers and the owners and shareholders of the Grand Bahama Port Authority. This government has fallen short and failed in Grand Bahama. They have failed on the airport, even though this government has spent millions of dollars, quite possibly, in much the same way the Bahamian consortium that was being contracted to develop a world-class airport has spent millions. Now the project is at an impasse. Some say it has stopped dead. The government is incommunicado, not communicating with their lawyers in London, nor with the consortium's lawyer. The government, in fact, is not communicating with the public, letting us know what the way forward is with respect to the airport. What is it they are going to promise the people? And so, again, this administration wishes to renew its contract with the people of West Grand Bahama and Bimini. We say they do not deserve to have their contract renewed. We should, as we will in 2026, fire them. And let this be the dry run on how we do that. This administration has failed at Dorian relief. The worst year under our administration in Dorian is better than the PLP's best year. Both of us had 2 years. From 2019 to the time we were kicked out of office, we had roughly 2 years. This government from 2021 to today had 2 years. And under the Minister administration, the reality is we have touched thousands of homes, either with $2,500, $5,000, $7,500, or $10,000 if you lost your entire home. I dare this government to find 100 homes on the island of Grand Bahama that they have impacted. So for all of what we said, we had the shortcomings we have, there is no comparison in terms of the work done during our time since Dorian in comparison with this administration. And so this administration and the Family Islands have failed to put in place a robust infrastructural development program. They've talked about it, but they haven't delivered. And in cases where they have deployed persons to work, they have generally single source and with no bids deployed contractors to do work without disclosing the terms of the agreement. Is the work urgently needed? Yes. Do we support any number of those who are likely to do the work or are doing the work? It's very possible. But do we deserve to know the details of the contract? Of course we do. And no reasonable government that's committed to transparency and accountability will not disclose the basis on which they are signing contracts for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. This speech from the throne made no mention of local government in New Providence. And with respect to the Family Island, if we are serious about doing transformative things in the Family Island, we should, in a substantial and meaningful way, increase the allocation to local government in the Family Island. And what about the Family Island Development Fund that has been talked about? To date, we do not know the terms of reference and how it is established, whether there's money in it. And, of course, we didn't see anything in the budget that suggested that they have already capitalized this Family Island Fund. It sounds good. On paper, it looks good, but it's non-existent by and large. This government is about flamming, profiling, but the reality is they're not about transformation of the Bahamian economy. Of course, this government loves to talk about natural resources without laying out a concrete plan. As is typical, this Davis-led administration has had a lot to say about these natural resources. And as a result, they developed a national investment fund to mobilize and utilize Bahamian resources and land for the benefit of the Bahamian people, they said. The facts are very little has been done. After the passage of the National Investment Fund Act of 2022, there has been no material action taken to establish this fund and get it working, despite the endless rhetoric. In fact, we know that there's a talented group of Bahamians working on developing the whole ecosystem and the infrastructure around the issue of carbon credits. However, the Prime Minister has done a horrible job trying to explain how that regime that has the potential to be transformational will deposit funds in a sovereign wealth fund or some other facility in order to benefit Bahamians by ring fencing, that is, locking in the funds to serve specific national development objectives. The policymakers have failed to help people understand how they can benefit from their natural resources, and have left all of us open to accusations, some that are baseless, but certainly the Prime Minister has failed in his duty to explain the way forward relative to natural resources. We will release a policy document over the course of the next 2 weeks that will outline a number of critical policy decisions that we believe point the way on how good governance ought to be done in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And so I want to make it clear, we don't want this government to fail. That's not what we are wishing for. We want the Bahamian people to succeed, and to the extent the government does well, governs well, the Bahamian people will be in a better position. However, it is clear that this government itself is unwilling to pivot in how they behave, and therefore they are headed for failure. And that's not a bad thing for the PLP to fail and be out of government, but it is a bad thing for the Bahamians who are relying on good governance in order for their lives to be better. As I address you this afternoon, the House of Assembly, as you know, would have returned recently from a long vacation. Some call it that we prorogued the House. The question is why? The government has a lot of interesting explanation as to what motivated them, but we have a theory. We believe that the Davis administration was hoping that during this paid vacation, you would forget the serious issues, and some would argue scandals that forced them to hit the pause button, hoping to reset the national conversation. A sitting member of parliament was facing some terrible personal accusations on domestic matters. There were serious concerns about the behavior of the former Minister of Immigration in conjunction with some colleagues. One, there was the issue concerning the release of we believe to be Chinese workers from one of the hotels that was under construction and renovation. We did not know who they were. They had no identification. They obviously did not have work permit, but immigration officers were not permitted to execute their job, and no sensible explanation to date have been given. There was also the drive-by and, of course, the funeral granting of citizenship that created tremendous confusion, that undermined the sacred granting of citizenship. All of these are critical issues that we believe the government is duty-bound to come into the House of Assembly, answer the questions, clarify issues which the government claim there are logical explanations for, but refuse to answer the question. Not only do they refuse to answer the question, they fight to even make sure the questions don't get on the agenda. This administration prorogued the House because they were like the tent during the speech for the throne. It was hot. It was hot. And they decided to pause and hit the reset button. Maybe you were in the air-conditioned section. Where I was, it was hot. And it looked like a couple of y'all were sweating. The former Minister of Works misled Parliament, giving a number of conflicting stories to mask the truth that he and the Prime Minister decided not to take good advice concerning the hedge program. And as a result of ending the hedge program, we've had a dramatic increase in your electricity bill. It is the Sayers-Davis increase. So every time you are unable to pay some other bill and you end up having to go and pay this additional cost on electricity, it is the Sayers-Davis increase. And what is also interesting is this administration, 2 years after being in office, says in the speech for the throne that they're going to review the energy sector with a view of doing any number of things that was stated way back in the blueprint for the blueprint for change. 2 years later, imagine that. 2 years later, they are about to do a review, as opposed to what they forecasted in their blueprint, that they would come in, undertake a quick review, and they would be in a position to chart the way forward in terms of transforming the energy sector. The bottom line is, as a result of their failure at BPL, it has cost the Bahamian people, residents, businesses, and the government over $100 million. Think about that. The government illegally loaned to a corporation about $110 million, concealed the fact, and when discovered, they even sought in this House to deny that it was a loan. And clearly, it was. You are paying, not just as a resident, not just as a business, but the government is paying more, and you paying the government, so you're paying twice. The Sears, Davis, electricity increase. The public was rightfully angry. But none of the ministers I just mentioned, none of them had any consequences. None of them lost their jobs. They were redeployed. That's the beauty of how the PLP operates. You could get something wrong, you could do something wrong, and the most that's going to happen is you get a new assignment. In some cases, it was a promotion. They simply were redeployed. But what was more disturbing is while there were no consequences for the ministers, the Prime Minister was angry at the whistleblowers, most of whom didn't provide anyone with the information. The information got out, and rather than be concerned about the veracity, the accuracy of the information, this administration was concerned about how did you know, how you find out. That's not the issue. The issue is, why did you make the bad decision that moved senior government officials to warn that you are acting ultra-virus of the law? And so who was punished? Not the minister, not their facilitators, some of whom were consultants. The public servants were punished. In the case of immigration, the top officer, who we believe going forward in the Bahamas, we have to look at the possibility of entrenching the director of immigration so that politicians are not able, through their whims and fancy, to simply get rid of people. The deputy was sent on leave. A number of the persons in different ministries who dare to challenge the Progressive Liberal Party, they end up on leave. That's how this administration is operating. And so no matter how affable they may appear or sweet in the demeanor, what matters is the decisions that's being made that affect the lives of ordinary Bahamians. There's no price to pay for the policymaker or the politician, but a price to pay for the public servant. And when they're called upon to come in this place to explain their actions, they start dodging or proroguing. I wonder how much more prorogation we are likely to have before they are voted out of government. It's clear that to every Bahamian that this is a government of lavish excess, elaborate public relations stunt, while the government struggles to pay subcontractors, the handful of homes that have been touched in Grand Bahama, the handful. The subcontractors weren't paid for, I think, 3 going on 4 months. I hope that they've been paid recently. Persons were so angry they're willing to use their names to point out what happened. And we're saying to them, no, the fellow's vindictive. All we need is the facts. We don't need you to use your name. It's that bad, that there are some public servants whose deductions can't reach the companies that need to reach, like insurance companies and others, because the government is having a cash crunch. While they are living large, public servants and others are having a cash crunch. In fact, in this House, a number of the members weren't paid. I believe it's Monday they were paid. And of course, some members on the government side are unlikely to even be aware that they were not paid, because, they pocket donkey. But the thing is, the average Bahamian citizen is not in the same position. What is also true, we advise that there may be up to some 350 persons who were waiting to be hired by the public service but couldn't because the money wasn't there. They just simply wasn't there. It's not true. The minister said it's not true. So maybe it wasn't 350, maybe 300. And so it's not true, even isn't 300, okay? But what we do know is persons who were hired through delegated authority, who were brought in on the 52-week program. A number of them are still in this program. After, in our view, for 2 years with no adverse evaluation, why are they not just simply made? They are made permanent and pensionable, but why can't they have the same benefits? And certainly in the wrap-up, if something different is happening, we'd like to hear. And so while some of our neighbors are skipping meals or choosing to pay one bill versus the other, this government still is not cutting back. I believe it was somebody trying to become a candidate recently on the other side who said it right. That his job when he was in government, he used to go to work. He didn't have to, he was somewhere, sipping on cocktails and living large. He wasn't going to receptions. He was doing work. That's what we recommend for this government. They have to get their priorities right. We are in tough times, but this government officials seem not to realize this. As Senator Maxine Seymour says, they have solid priorities. Don't confuse me with the folks you pay for suits for. A clear example of this was their trip to Bermuda. Yeah, come lay on the floor. Come lay on the floor. Right? Okay, so again, they went to Bermuda spending your money to do political work, which other people would pay a penalty. However, this government paid no price. They're running, Foxhill is running, unable to face the pressure. Why? Because he is a part of a serial law-breaking administration. They broke the law by claiming to borrow $70 million from Qatar when only the Minister of Finance has the legal authority to execute a loan arrangement. The former Minister of Housing borrowed $20 million. Again, a violation of the law. Again, only the Minister of Finance had the ability to do so. They broke the law with illegal advance of $232 million of central bank's SDR foreign reserves. Again, a violation of the law. They loaned BPL $110 million. Again, a violation of the law. We could go on. Serial lawbreakers. They broke the law with refusal to publish 6 reports from the Fiscal Responsibility Council. They broke the law. Again, by not disclosing fully all contracts that they have issued after 60 days as required by law. This administration requires the Bahamian people to be law-abiding citizens when they themselves are not leading by example. Yet, some citizens are subjected to them weaponizing certain organs of government, and people are harassed. People are being investigated. We have said before, if anybody conducts malfeasance while in office, they deserve to be dealt with. But the question is, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. We see far too many inappropriate behavior by this government, but there's no consequences for them, but there's threats and intimidation and action against, we believe, their opponents. And so, as I wrap up, I would simply say, with more than 60% of the last speech from the throne, objectives or initiatives not accomplished, it is amazing to me the government has introduced a brand new set of proposals that, again, we believe is a part of the tradition, the theater, which is the Progressive Liberal Party. And so, Mr. Deputy, we challenge this government to live up to its commitments. Let's find that $50 million we said is for small business and micro business. Let's empower our people by making grants, loans, taking an equity position in their business available so that they could succeed. Let's make sure that this money that you could suddenly find to go and flood West Grand Bahama and Bimini, why is it not available year-round for the average Bahamian who deserves a right to succeed in their country, so our children can come home after university because they believe there's an opportunity for them in this country, and that they believe it's not who you know, but it's what you know that gets you in and makes you upwardly mobile. But in this administration, it's all about politics. My apologies, all about politics for them. And so I'll quote the
Honorable Member, you're requesting
just 2 minutes.
Two minutes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We believe we have to reduce the red tape, lessen government interference, that new industries are waiting to burst forward. Our cultural product is the best in the world. We have to empower our artists and artisans so that they can take advantage of it. Shannon Dawn Cartwright says it often. The poor need a hand up, not just a handout. Government is about facilitation. This administration is squandering opportunities to facilitate the empowerment of our people. They believe in big government. They believe that they ought to be the employment agency because they have failed to grow an economy that would allow people who are industrious, people who are vigilant to succeed. But come 2026, beginning in this November, we are working with the Bahamian people to send this administration a clear message. We are sick and tired. Enough is enough. It's time to vote them out and to fire them. Mr. Deputy, with those few words, Marco City supports the resolution to thank the Governor General, and we ask the people of West Grand Bahama to give Ricardo Grant an opportunity to serve you.